Hey everyone, it's Jory. As you know, we are doing a summer of replay episodes of the top downloads that we've had on the podcast so far. And this one that you're about to tune into right now is the number one downloaded episode of all time. And it's for very good reason. It is a fantastic conversation with Sylvie Koukassian, who imparts really beautiful wisdom and tools on how to create effective and healthy relationships. She shares her personal story, and a big focus on our conversations is around boundaries. I'm so excited to have this replay up because I refer to this episode often. And again, these are the episodes I am constantly sending links out to clients saying, you've got to check this conversation out. Don't forget, also check out the link in the show notes for the Get Unstuck assessment to figure out the area of your life in which you're most stuck. And it's not too soon to join the September cohort of the Journey Forward method. And I still have just a few spots available for the women's retreat at Marival in Tucson, Arizona, which is September 26th to 29th, where we are going to renew and recharge our spirit. I cannot wait to be with those group of ladies because we have all earned a moment to slow down and have relaxation and self-care. So be sure to check out the link in the notes. And I really hope you enjoy this replay of the conversation with Sylvie Koukassian. Take care and be well.
Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hi, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am so excited to have Sylvie Koukassian on today, and I've been following Sylvie on Instagram for a while of her beautiful insight and giving wonderful, amazing tools for relationships and how to thrive in our emotional awareness and all the tools that we need to move through this complicated, beautiful, and messy world of emotions and sensitivities. And I'm really thrilled that you're on today. Thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to have our conversation. So please tell our listeners a little bit more about you and how you got to do what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Jory. We've been waiting to have this conversation for so long, so I'm so finally here. Oh, where do I even begin with these? It's always the most awkward part for me doing these introductions, right? So for me, I think a lot of my journey in this work came from being an immigrant. I moved to the United States when I was 4 from Syria and Saudi Arabia from the Middle East.
Okay.
From such a different cultural background, and yet I've been dipped in the American culture since I was 4. So I have so much of the American culture in me, and yet so much of my Middle Eastern lens still dictates so much of how I see the world. And so I had like these, like almost like schizophrenic in my brain, like 2 totally different ways of seeing the world. And I would be battling internally and not really realizing that that was even happening for a long time. And so I think that's probably the biggest piece of what really helps me really empathize with people that come from, struggles with identity pieces, with, different cultures, couples that come from different cultural backgrounds. And when I say culture, I'm not just talking about just ethnicity. I'm talking about different ways of seeing the world.
Yes.
Whether that's an extrovert and an introvert or
whatever lens you're looking through is your culture.
Exactly. And so from there, of course, I've shared a lot about having a lot of my own trauma as a child and struggled with anxiety and being hypersensitive, really emotional child. So all of those things that I didn't know how to really navigate led me to finding, okay, where can I start? It's like almost like an intuitive path. I didn't choose it. Like I just was naturally called to things that felt very healing for me.
Yeah.
That helped me almost like what is that doll, that Humpty Dumpty that fell off the wall?
Yes,
what is it?
Yes. Yeah, the egg.
That's what I felt like. And I was like, oh, where can I put my pieces back together? And so I spent 7 years as an actress actually before.
Oh, did you?
It did. And that helped me, playing different roles and characters and embodying their emotions was incredibly healing for me until it wasn't. Wow. And then I'm like, okay, now it's not enough. Now I need to actually deal with the real stuff that's underneath this mask that I'm, performing. But it was a beautiful bridge for me to help me get here.
I love that. It's a way of embodying it in a little bit of a safer way.
Exactly.
Right? And so until you went through that process, you then became safer in embodying it in your own skin, in your own identity.
Absolutely. And that's why, I do believe that doing some kind of shadow work, whether that's, any kind of form of creativity for trauma or healing, is so valuable, especially as the starting point, whether that's writing or dancing or singing or any kind of, that can really help us still access our feelings, but we might not be able to talk about our feelings quite yet.
Sure. So in doing your work with your clients, what would you say are some of your go-to favorite tools to work through, or the people who come and see you, they're coming to you for a particular reason, right? What is your favorite toolbox to share?
My favorite toolbox. There's definitely a handful of things that come to mind as you ask that question. I would say because I have a theatrical background, role play is probably my number one go-to with couples in particular. So, couples are coming to me and they're going through the same conversation basically in front of me that I would get to witness behind closed. I get to witness what goes on behind closed doors, right? Mm-hmm. And so as that plays out for a while, and as I empathize with their story, with their situation, after a while, I start to guide them to say things differently as a practice, as like an experiment. Let's try. If you were to approach your partner in this way, let's just see what would happen. It's almost like putting on a character or playing a role that you wouldn't normally play. But when you see the powerful result, you're more inclined to, and it's not like you're being a phony person, but if you had an experience of being a certain way, or if you didn't see something modeled, if you didn't see vulnerability modeled or healthy boundaries modeled, here you get to play with that and practice and see how it feels.
I must have been channeling you because, so I got divorced about 5 years ago, and I started dating my boyfriend, who we've been together now 3.5 years. And when I first started dating him, I told myself I was going to play a little game with myself. And it wasn't like game playing in terms of, I hate that whole dating and having to play games. I wanted to be authentic. Yeah. But the game I was playing with myself was a game of authenticity, of let me just see what happens if I actually say how I feel. Let me try this on. Let me experiment, like you said, of what would it look like if I weren't afraid to express myself. Because in my marriage, that was not a possibility, right? I felt like my balloon would be burst, like it'd be a needle in my balloon, or I'd be shut down, or I was told I was needy or high maintenance for having needs. No, I'm just human. So to be able to experiment, let's look what it feels like to just say how I feel. And luckily I chose a partner who could receive that. So I was able to continue that experiment till it became natural, but it's hard to do.
Absolutely.
It's a very vulnerable, scary, difficult task when we haven't been role modeled safety for self-expression.
Totally. And what you describe is like you're entering foreign territory that you've never entered before. It's like, is this safe? You're like looking around as you're doing it, like, what's going to happen? I've never done this before. And it feels so strange, even if the thing you're doing is so good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. So role playing is a beautiful practice. And you talk a lot. Like I said, I follow all your work. And as a therapist, I'm always so pleased when I see such alignment in styles, because I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of people doing work that isn't very skillful. And you talk a lot about boundaries and, speak to that a little bit, because I think setting boundaries in relationship is something many people, again, there's fear around.
Absolutely. Boundaries is probably, I can get so amped up talking about boundaries.
Oh, good. Go for it. Go for it.
It's such an important piece about relationships You know, I was having a conversation with my partner yesterday, and some of the themes that were coming up a lot during my individual sessions was this element of power in a relationship. When we're with someone, what I'm always looking for when I'm sitting in front of a couple is who's the one that's really holding more of the power, and who's the one that's enabling this person to have that power. There's usually one person that is taking advantage of the situation, again, whether that's consciously or unconsciously, most often unconsciously. And then there's the other partner that is allowing certain behaviors to take place, whether because they don't know how to set boundaries. They think that this is normal. This is the pattern they grew up with at home. So they don't.
Or it's fear-based, right? That if I speak up to hold a boundary, I'm going to be rejected and therefore abandoned.
Absolutely. Or ridiculed or shamed. I mean, we can go on and on about the reasons, you know, people are so terrified of holding boundaries. And yet that's the work. In order to bring that power dynamic back to more of a neutral place, there has to be the person that is holding more of that power. And that can look like anything from, you know, not taking ownership of their mistakes, constantly getting defensive and being critical and not actually being vulnerable what's happening, or blaming the other partner for everything and never being willing to point the finger at themselves. And then the other partner, they might look like the saint, you know, they might look like the person who's like, you know, I'm listening to my partner, I'm being vulnerable, I'm doing all these things, I'm being such a good partner. But when the boundaries are not there, all the other stuff basically goes thrown out the window.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's great. And though, until you're able to call out your partner to see if they're going to be able to listen to your boundaries, you are not communicating on fair ground. And so part of my work is helping the more, I would say the person that has less of the voice in the relationship feel more empowered to start speaking up, to start practicing baby steps with boundaries, and then giving the relationship enough time to see if that person is willing to hear that. And it's tricky because if a couple has had this dynamic for many, many years, a lot of times other person's like, I'm not dealing with this, I'm out. And so it's like they don't really get to, a lot of times they have to take what they've learned in that relationship and practice it in another relationship.
And oftentimes they might just get stuck in the same pattern in the next one. So they might as well just stay with the first one that might have been a great relationship, but just was hard to work through some of the shit that was coming up.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
So I imagine there's people who are going to listen to this and say, oh my God, you just described my relationship. Thank you for naming it so clearly. And so a first step for someone who is feeling maybe disempowered, how would they even go, what would you say to that person to go about expressing that to the other partner if they're not in a container of therapy where it was safe for being guided for them?
That's a beautiful question. And thank you for going practical, because I think that's really important when we go into topics that can feel a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, you know, how I would really invite somebody that's in the role of not feeling like they've been owning their boundaries is to really own that, you know, go to your partner and really acknowledge your role in this dynamic. You know, I'm realizing that, man, I have been really not aware of certain things that have been important for me. I've been playing out these same patterns and, you know, trying to, you know, not rock the boat and doing all these things to please you. Take ownership of why you haven't been holding the boundary, because what that will do is disarm the other person. Yeah. Because if you go into it with, you know what, I have all these boundaries and I realize I need you to do this. This is important to me. If you go into it in that firm kind of way, it's just, you're not likely going to get met with the result that you're looking for.
Absolutely. It's so much easier said than done.
Yeah, it is. You might need 5 of these conversations before you can say it in the way that you need to. And that's okay. It's more than enough.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because, you know, as a therapist, I, of course, have, you know, I think many people who are therapists enter the field because there's something that we need out of it as we learn and grow through our own healing of whatever our wounds were at any point in our lives. And the way that I do my therapy work is holding that space for very practical, tool-driven and very kind of higher level. Let's step back and have awareness on the process. Let's take a look at this being as a whole, from birth to now, transgenerational patterns we carry. I mean, there's so many layers. It's really amazing. Any relationship, works out. It truly is. It's so complex. And to have the courage to be willing to say, I want to work through this with another person, and to guide someone through that work is really powerful. And since my divorce, I've been in a relationship with a man who I am 100% in love with, and he's a psychologist, and so we speak the same language, and we still get stuck. And it's so interesting that as we go through this work, it would be so nice to believe, I know all these tools, which means I can always use them. And I like to be very transparent where I still get stuck, because I think it's a reminder that you can go through therapy, you can be given the tools, you can know them inside out, and they can still be sometimes hard to implement.
Absolutely. And
when we're triggered,
more challenging when you know all the tools, because then you both become righteous. Like me and my partner are like, oh yeah, well, in therapy we learn this and it's like, then it's like, oh my gosh, now this language is even the things that are supposed to be helping me are now becoming masks to cover up the vulnerability even more. So it's such a tricky thing. It's
so tricky. And I think everyone's striving for ease and flow and validation and to be seen in relationship. And it's hard because we're often not role modeled where to get that from.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, certainly our parents' generation had a lot less tools, so we don't know who to look to gain these. And, I think it becomes a huge challenge for couples.
Absolutely. I like what you said about calling out the process a lot. Mm-hmm. Naming what's going on and almost separating ourselves from the issues itself, and being able to name, like, wow, we're not good at boundaries, or wow, there's some trauma in this room, or we're having some challenges, we're stuck, really
we're stuck.
The thing is so powerful, because immediately you're like, oh, it's no longer a me or you conversation, but it's really about us, and naming this outside entity that just makes the conflict and the things that come up feel so much more manageable.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing too. One of the things that John and I have been able to do in our relationship is to be, I really try to strive for this. Sometimes it works better than others, but to be curious about what's behind this, right? Because we have this surface level disagreement or sensitivity, and, because we're both very sensitive. And so sometimes it can become a hierarchy of sensitivities. Well, I'm more sensitive than you, so we can name that, and yet it still feels like, okay, but we're both very sensitive right now. But to be really curious about what's behind that, because I always think there's like the presenting issue or the story that gets repeated, and it becomes our narrative, and it becomes almost a crutch of this is our story, right? Yeah. But to be able to be curious around what's behind this. And it takes time and patience to have that curiosity in relationship, to be willing to sit with, I don't know what's behind this, but let's uncover, right? Because I know for him and I, often it can go back to childhood or our previous marriages. And we can have the awareness to say, oh, this is an old wound showing up here in the present moment. So let's have compassion for this old wound and see what we can do to honor that, and then find new language right now to manage through it.
Beautiful.
So much easier said than done.
You're talking about that uncharted territory again, like approaching it from a place of, I don't know. We're not actually experts here, I think the times when I'm the most disarmed by my partner is when I'm triggered and I'm upset, and he says to me, I don't know how to help you right now. And I turn into a puddle of mush, because it takes so much courage to say that. And yet as soon as he says that, something just happens to my nervous system that I no longer feel threatened. It's very disarming for me.
Well, again, you feel validated in being seen during this process that otherwise feels messy.
Yeah.
And for someone to say that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that there's gaps. One of the biggest things, I think there's this misconception. And I think the biggest challenge in this modern day of technology and Tinder and swiping and dating is that relationships have become very replaceable. As soon as challenges come up, we're like, okay, well, I don't want to deal with this. I think we have a lower threshold for discomfort in the younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
And so teaching people to really challenge some of their unhealthy expectations in my work is huge, and also helping them tolerate more discomfort. Hey, you and your partner are probably going to have a couple of gaps in your relationship that may never go away.
Mm-hmm.
And them, okay, how are we going to tolerate that? How can you still talk about the things, like you said, you guys are both really sensitive. With me and my partner, it's, I have to say no to so many things because I don't have the energy as a very sensitive person. And he's like, come on, let's go do this and do this. And part of me I feel so disappointed and sad because I can't. It's not that even that I don't want to, but it creates a lot of friction in our relationship. And it's something we have to both be sensitive about. He has to be sensitive with me and honor, wow, I really get that this is really too much for you. And I have to really acknowledge, wow, you must feel so alone wanting to share all these experiences with me and knowing that you have to do them by yourself. And so, that has taken 4 years to get to that place, Jory. Let's be really honest, It takes a lot.
The key word you said in that is and. And like, honestly, when I was, my ex and I, when we were getting our divorce, we ended up going through 3 different couples therapists. Until we finally found the one that worked. And even though we got divorced, she still worked. And that was one of the biggest things I learned from her was and instead of but.
Yes.
Because it's
say that again, Jory.
Yes. And instead of but. Honestly, that was one of my biggest takeaways in all of couples therapy. Because if you have the ability and the awareness to say and, both are true. Because there are multiple truths, right? You were just describing a situation of your truth of being sensitive and how that impacts your ability to maybe engage in activities, and your partner's experience of maybe sometimes not having you by his side. Exactly. Both are 100% true. Neither are right or wrong. It's not a good or a bad. It's not a but. It's let's allow both to exist and have honor and compassion for both to exist.
Totally.
Because I think so much in relationship, couples get stuck when they want to prove their point. But if we can remind couples to say yes and, everything shifts.
And it's like, it makes me think of, I was single for 6 years before I met my partner. So was he. And so we both had so much momentum around alone, me. Even if we're dating or interacting with people in our world, it was still all about us as individuals. And so it's like when you have that much time being alone and reflecting and you gain all this self-awareness, you might have all the tools, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to automatically be able to bridge that with another person. Yeah. And it's like, oh, there's me, there's you, and now there's us. It's like this third entity that now you have to start speaking to and about. And again, there's a huge adjustment period with this stuff that it's really important to call out.
Yeah. I recently saw one of your Instagram posts that I need to bring attention to.
Sure.
And it was a quote of, we are all high maintenance. So will you please speak more to that? It says Dr. Stan Tatkin. Is that who that was quoted by?
Stan Tatkin is a brilliant therapist that specializes also with the attachment styles. And I think that has been probably the most freeing concepts in my relationship, knowing that we all bring challenges and difficulties and wounds and traumas and whatever we want to call it. And for me, being able to really find the maturity, and it took a lot of maturity, to be able to call out what parts of myself were difficult. Even though, yes, I'm sensitive, it is a gift, but man, that can be hard to be with sometimes. Or, I can be really blaming or critical when I'm hurting. And so people that, I wanted to actually talk about that self-awareness and the importance of being mindful with our own self and how we relate, how people see us, how our partners see us in relationship. It's so freeing instead of defending it. And, it's challenging when we don't see it, but it's like if our partner is bringing certain things to our attention, hey, you get really defensive when we're having an argument. And if we're just automatically, no, I don't do that. Instead, what would it look like if we're like, I don't really see that about myself, but I'm willing to pay more attention. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to kind of notice the next time we fight, if I do this, I want to believe, obviously this is something that you're seeing and I don't want to invalidate your experience. Right. So it's, how do we hear our partner's feedback without immediately just putting our hand up and saying, no, that's not true. You focus on your own experience. Well, yes, let's do that. But we also have to make space for that feedback. And where we're difficult, we're all difficult. Yes, we are. And that's because we're human. Right. And part of it too, I don't know, I really connected with when I saw that because I was with my ex-husband since I was 13 years old.
Wow. And when we were in high school, he once said to me, "You're high maintenance and I'm a low maintenance mechanic." And so for 23 years, I believed something was wrong with me. And I'm not putting him down because he's a great person. We just had very different needs in relationship, which is clearly why we're divorced, right? And but I believed those words internally that something was wrong with me because I was told, it was like being told, you're too much. And so that made me feel like my emotions or my desire for connection or vulnerability or intimacy were too much for someone else. And I dated after my divorce. And then when I met John, kind of again with that whole, let me just see what happens when I, say how I feel. Totally. I jokingly said to him, "Oh, hey, by the way, just so you know, apparently I'm really needy." And I presented it almost kind of jokingly, but I also wanted to be upfront. I've been told I'm needy. I've been told I'm high maintenance. I just want you to know what you're getting into. And he had the most amazing response. He looked at me and said, what? You're not needy. Mm. And I was like, oh my God, at 37 years old, for the first time in my life, I was told I wasn't needy. I just simply had needs. Mm. And that did not make me high maintenance. And I realized the key for successful relationships was finding someone whose needs matches yours, or who your ability to hold space for each other's needs. Not all of our needs are going to align at the same time, but how can I honor, right? It's like what you were saying with you and your partner. It's that to not be threatened by someone's needs or to not label it or judge it as a negative, because we're human beings wired for connection. We're wired for attachment. It helps us keep us alive and thrive and survive as a species. So it's really about, part of it is mate selection and finding someone who understands what our needs are and to be willing to sit with us when they arrives.
Absolutely. I love that. And you're bringing attention to the point that when we're matched with somebody that is truly incompatible, it's like almost like they'll do anything to, it's such a hurtful way to do at what you just shared, It's so hurtful. And it's, we can only say the other person is high maintenance when we're saying that about ourselves. We don't get to just point that finger at someone else. That's not okay in my book. You know? Never okay. And it's looking at who looks at the parts of us that might be challenging, but that they love us so much that those challenges are so worth working through. And yes, not every couple, if you have a really avoidant person and a really anxious person, that is it can be a recipe for disaster when the avoidant person is not willing to lean into those needs. And it's again, it can be just a totally a destructive dynamic. So I know we could have a whole session just on attachment styles.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. It's actually something that I find in my work, I go through various phases of like, oh, it's all about this, or it's all about this, right? Whether it's love languages, whether it's about attachment styles, I think they're all equally valid. I think it's going to show up in whatever people are struggling with in the moment. We can find different avenues for creating a container of understanding or a framework for tools, right?
Totally.
And yeah, attachment styles are fascinating. I'm actually going through some of that in my relationship now. I just got back from being in Europe for a whole month, and I was there without my partner. And it highlighted all of our stories and attachment and insecurities and sensitivities. And I'm not afraid to do that work, right? Like you said, let's lean into where we're getting stuck right now as an ability to become more aware, more communicative, more vulnerable, and continue to let that love grow, because it doesn't get easier with anyone else necessarily, right? As long as your needs align, as long as you're willing to do the work. And we're so committed to one another. And it's, how do we lean into this right now and hold the container for, this is really hard and we'll get through it. This is really hard right now and I still love you. Or this is really hard right now and I need to set a boundary and not talk to you.
Or I'm really mad at you right now, but I still love you.
And I still love you, right? And
I love that. And I think that is like the highlight key part of this episode. It's just so valuable. And it's so, as we talk about it, it just makes so much space and creates so much more possibility. It makes so much more room.
Yes.
So it's such an expansive concept that I think that, again, we just don't realize how valuable it can be, or how to apply it even.
Well, and the power of language is so powerful, right? And this is something that whether we're talking internally in our own mind, and that inner critic in our head is so loud and so pervasive, and we tend to believe it. So, I work with a lot of my clients of, let's just start shifting the language in which we're speaking to ourselves, so we have a greater ability for some deeper self-compassion, so how we can begin to shift to talking with our partners. Yeah,
absolutely. Language. So, I mean, even goes back to the piece about stepping into foreign territory. You're in many ways, you're speaking another language. You're speaking a new, you're articulating things in words that you've never spoken in that same way. And it's profound. It's profound.
What is it you love about working with couples?
With couples, I love being able to witness years of armor dissolve in front of their eyes, when they're able to really see what's possible when they can just take off that mask, even if it's just for a few moments, and to reveal the tender little child that exists in each of us. And it's just so powerful for me to be able to witness that, because it's like that's where the new possibility exists. They're relating each other in a way that they never felt safe to before.
Yeah. And what a gift that you create that container and that space for them.
I try.
But I can tell in the style in which you do your work that that's why people come to you, right? I mean, that's something that they're getting when they're doing that work with you, is having that safe space and that container to be able to even point out when that moment exists. Because some couples might not even recognize the moment when that arises.
And some couples don't. And some people refuse to go there,
Yeah.
And that's kind of where after working with someone for a while, if they're not kind of willing to lean into that space, it's important to honor that that's usually the end of the road with that person. They may need a little bit more life experience to hit that same note a few more times until they're ready to try a different note.
Yeah. Oh, so do you ever get stuck in, because this is something that I get really curious about, when you're able to not utilize your own tools in your own relationship, how do you get out of that pattern?
When I'm stuck, not knowing, well, for me, when I'm triggered, I'm blank. It's like, I lost access to, who am I? What's going on? So I think for me that the key is really, Brian makes fun of me, but he's like, I've never seen someone cry as deep as you. And he's like, I've never cried as much as in my whole life ever since being with you. I'm like, you're welcome. Okay. You're welcome. But really, it's usually I just need to go into a really deep cry, or just like I have to give myself a full body surrender, especially when I'm clinging or feeling desperate to like find something, or, again, trying to prove a point or even reach for a tool. I usually just need to remind myself, fall into the feeling. There's usually wisdom on the other side. And there usually is. We try to understand what's happening with our feeling before feeling it a lot of the times. We're like, okay, I wonder why I'm feeling this. Well, you can't know until you feel it.
Right.
And so that's been a practice that has been really, really, really life-changing for me. Like, that's what was there, or that's the memory that was trying to come up that I was, really trying to suppress or minimize, and then I can take responsibility more from that place too. So
it helps you to not externalize it.
Exactly. I go there for a long time before I get to that point.
I try to avoid asking the why. I think anytime we're like, why is this happening? Why are you doing this? It serves to only keep us stuck in a cycle of reactivity. And there's so much that there's no why. It just is, right? Their emotions just are. Feelings and experiences. Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? And we could spend existential hours wondering and not get anywhere. And it's the same thing, I think, with our emotions. So for me, it's, can I just accept this is what's here right now, even if I don't like it? How do I accept what I don't like? And if I accept it, then I can give it room to exist. And then if I give it room to exist, I can begin to relate differently to it. And then I'm not so charged by it. And then I can be able to then maybe access some of my executive functioning and some of my tools in a little bit of a different way. And yet in the height of the moment, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, super hard. It's always helpful when you are partnered with somebody that can help you get to that place too, and just remind you, hey, it's okay. We don't need to solve anything. We don't need to fix anything. We don't need to know why, like you said, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to feel sad, or it's okay to feel scared, or it's okay. I mean, how many of us still need that permission to feel? I mean, I don't care till I'm 90 years, 100 years old. I'm still going to feel really comforted when somebody comes to me and says, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
John and I did I just released a podcast interview that he and I did together where we talk about the beginning of our relationship. And he shares, and obviously I know this, this story, but if anyone wants to go back and listen to it, one of the things he said that he knew he was falling in love with me was he was over my house one day and he was leaving. And this was like before the I Love Yous came out. So I don't know, maybe we were dating for 3 months. And he was just in kind of a bummed mood. He was sad. He was feeling down. There was no why. It just, he's someone who experiences his emotions and feels them. And he was leaving my house and he apologized. And he said, I'm really sorry for not being in a good mood right now. And I looked at him and I said, you don't need to apologize. Like, it's just a mood. And he assured me, like, it's not you. You didn't do anything wrong. Like, this is just my emotion right now. And I looked at him and I said, I accept all of you. And he was like, wait, what? To have the experience of being accepted was something he had never fully felt, where his emotional range was given permission. And of course, if he were to ever one day be, abusive, no, that's not acceptable. But I'm talking just pure emotion, right? Yeah. Of feeling sad or just feeling down, and to not have to apologize for emotions because they're human. And that's something that when he feels highly sensitive, which he can get to, I really hold that container of compassion for, this is just your emotions, and I'm not scared of your emotions. And hopefully by me allowing that space and giving that container gives him the permission to just feel them in a different way. Mm. And that's, I think, that one of the gifts that relationships can serve to heal us and heal our old wounds.
Totally. I love that. That's beautiful that you were able to it just picturing when you say that, him like feeling like he has to not be sad, or, it's just so painful to feel like we have to put on these masks, or, we can't share when we're hurt or where we're not in a good mood. And it's so common in our culture.
Yeah. And especially for men to not be allowed to feel, they don't have any role models for this. And this is a lot of the work he's doing in the world, is teaching men emotional awareness. And giving the skills, because, men aren't socialized for this. Women are the one expected to be emotional or to be highly sensitive. And I have my fair share of that as a human being, but it's more acceptable for women because we've been role modeled. Women can feel their emotions in a different way, or we can blame it on having our period or feeling our hormones in a different way, that men aren't given the same space to feel. So it's ironic to me that you now get men and women in relationship together. Like I said, it's amazing any of it ever works out, but it's when you have the desire to lean in and work through, because I'm committed, I love, and emotions are being human. I don't want to experience another relationship where feelings aren't present.
What else is there? I mean, there's other things, obviously, but I mean, if we can't connect on an emotional platform in any capacity, it just feels like relationships would lose so much of their joy and their depth and their complexity and juiciness. My partner does a lot of men's work too, so I love knowing that other men are also really stepping up to help men work through their shame and their step into their emotional range. So beautiful. I love that. And
it gives me hope, honestly. I think we're at a turning point in our culture where it's being expressed in a different way finally. And as much as I hate and resent so much of social media, this is where I love and embrace so much of social media, because I think it gives a safer venue for people to access these tools, right? And it gives more anonymity around being able to get these tools. Like, in your social media, you give so many great relationships tips and tools that anyone can get there and start to implement it in a safe way, because they can be vulnerable. And I don't have to express this out loud yet, but I can relate to something and say, oh, someone sees me, someone gets me, someone has now given me insight into what to do with this emotion, or, oh, I'm highly sensitive too. Thank you for sharing that. Now I feel like someone understands me, right?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, it's funny because men don't often write too much. They don't comment too much on my posts, but I get a lot of messages behind the scenes, and I'm starting to see more men engage. And I notice inviting them and really holding, like you said, holding that space, but inviting them is a really important piece. It is that permission piece. I just spoke to, I had somebody that I spoke to on the shame that men feel in relationships, and even that taking that step to getting support, and how pervasive that shame experience can really be for men. And I mean, I can relate on some way, but in many ways, I absolutely don't relate to that. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So how can people find you? You do your work in your private practice. And you have beautiful content you put out to the world. And do you do any other online work, or people work with you online, or is it all face-to-face?
So the Instagram would be the first place that I would direct people to, because like you said, there's a lot of free content and a lot of practical tools. I try to do live sessions to really give people, especially that don't have access to therapy, free support. Again, it's not therapy. We want to be really careful, but it's...
I know, yes. We have to be careful with our licensure in the state of California.
Exactly. It is.
But you're offering tools.
Yes, offering tools there. I also have a couple different online programs that people can check out on my website. It's sylviekoukassian.com. I can send you the link.
Yeah, all those links will be in the show notes so people can access them for sure.
Perfect. And so me and my partner have a couple programs. We have a boundaries program that we've created together and a couples conflict to connection program. It's a 90-day program. So
tell me more about that. That sounds amazing.
The 90-day one, it's really cool because it's the best and the best of both of our work. And so
what is his background real quick? What does he do?
He does a lot of work with couples as well, and men particularly now he's working with, and his is more masculine and feminine dynamics, which I don't do that at all. And so he has a lot of that on the program, and I have a lot of work with attachment styles and more of the practical communication, and we're doing a lot of this stuff together. And we share lots of our journey in the program, and people see that, look, we've struggled, we've gone through a lot, especially in the beginning, and we've definitely, the tools are extremely valuable and helpful. And so if anyone's interested, they can check out the program.
I love that. Isn't it so beautiful? I feel so incredibly, I don't even know what the right word to put on it, blessed, excited to be able to have a partner. And it sounds like you guys have the same experience in which you're living your truth, you're living the tools, and you are able to say, look, we're not perfect, but here's how we go through it. And then be able to share that gift with others. Like it's such an amazing space to hold that I think so many people are going to be able to benefit from. Like John and I are leading a couples retreat together in Costa Rica.
Oh my God, amazing. Where?
Where? Yeah, it's going to be at the Pura Vida Spa and Resort.
Oh, I've heard of that place.
Oh, it's amazing. And that's going to be next April. And, I think so much, and it sounds like you guys do the same, so much of what I think gives us the strength and the tools that we teach are like, this is what it looks like in real life.
Absolutely.
And here's where we struggle. And when we struggle, here's how we, the patterns of why we were stuck. And then here's how we got out of it. And we're not perfect, we're human. And our emotions are human. And we're committed and we work through it. Because what other option is there but to work through it? No other person's going to be easier.
Yeah, and getting the support. I always share this. Me and my partner, we go to therapy when stuff comes up. We have our own therapist that we both work with, and there's still a lot of things that we're in a growth stage in our own relationship. Even even doing couples workshops and stuff, I'm not there yet. Like just working through my own trauma. So it's like being able to acknowledge, it's okay. Take a breather, but doing our own work so then we can bring that to other people is just really, really important to me. So for people to really get that, even as long as, me and my partner have been together for 4 years, but there's still a lot that's, a work in progress in myself that has nothing to do with my partner.
And isn't that always going to hopefully be our path too, that we have our individual path and growth and our joint path and growth?
Yes.
Because we're never done. We're never like, okay, fully, I'm here, I've arrived, I have no more work to do.
But I want to be so bad, George.
I mentioned in another podcast I recorded, I have a favorite artist that has great quotes, and his line of art is called The Story People. And he's got a great Instagram page, and his name is Brian Andres. And he has these really kind of wonky drawings and these just really quotes that just speak to me. But I have one that sits in my waiting room at my office, and it says something to the effect of, like, why won't all these life experiences go away and leave me alone now? Like, I've learned what I'm supposed to learn. Can't I be done? And yet, I think when we're on a path of awareness and we're on a path of growth, we're also open to more growth and more awareness. And we kind of get cracked open, right?
We really do. I always say, even with my work and my, the success of whatever I'm doing, I always tell my partner, I'm like, if you didn't come into my life, I would not have the courage to step into this.
Yeah.
Even though it was like the mirror was blazing and it was like painful. Like people often think, oh, it's just going to be uplifting. And oh my God, and he is such a supportive person that in many ways it's like, wow, I actually get to do the things that I want to do here. And now I have to face that. So it's just so fascinating how it looks very different than what we would imagine.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we're so aligned in so many ways. I feel like I could absolutely talk to you for hours of all things relationships. So we will have to do this again sometime. Thank you.
I would love that.
So much for your time today. And I will have all of the links to ways to access you in the show notes so any listeners can find you and get to learn from your beautiful tools and wisdom. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing in the world. I really I'm so happy to have had this conversation, and I'm sure it's benefiting many already. So thank you
so much. Maybe we'll end up doing a couples retreat in Costa Rica together.
Yes, setting intentions. I love it. I love it. All right, thank you so much.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.